Hello there, guys. Yeah, today I want to do a quick one. It's about the difference between slavery and freedom. There's something most people don't normally confuse, and it's that your freedom does not come from institutions or from those who govern you. Your freedom is something that is inherent, that it's inborn. And this is why you find whenever you try to conform to society or situations that do not resonate with your true being, there is always a conflict within you. And this is what plagues a lot of people. So basically, in the beginning, there is a story that we are not told, in the creation of man. Uh, Man was given autonomy to forge his own destiny. And then he was sent a guide who was hidden deep within himself. And this is the story of Adam. So Eve, who is normally confused as a woman, which is not the case, Eve was the spirit of life that came to guide Adam to understand how he had come into being and how he had come uh, to this place and how he would ascend to the heavens. And because of his awareness, he discovered that the gods which were surrounding him were not his friends. Basically, they wanted him as a slave. They wanted him to worship them, and this is where you hear the story of eating from the tree of knowledge, where he becomes disobedient, and because of this, there is a conflict by the masters who are threatened that if he looks up to his fullness, he will be greater than them and they will not be able to control him. So they seek ways to neutralize him, and this is where they cast him into the material body or the dense body, whereby it becomes a coffin. That's another story. If you wanted to know the whole thing, I can go into details, but I'm just trying to put it short. So our story begins with the descendants of Adam, or the children of Seth, who are basically the ones who inherited the earth and repopulated. And it's said the first generation, even though they are what you call it, they were given amnesia. Yeah, you can make people forgetful, but you can't remove their inherent nature, their true nature. So wisdom descended so that she could nurture her children, and they became quite enlightened. And this was also a threat to the governors of the fresh. So what they did was they came up with a plan whereby they wanted to subjugate humanity forever. So what they did was they tried to mix their seed with that of humanity, but it was a failure because even though they tried to create genetic hybrids, they didn't actually conform, or they didn't give the intended outcome. And this is where you hear the world was first wiped out, and there was the flood that came and wiped out the fresh, and there was the surviving races of humanity that would proceed. But then the story doesn't end there. There is another things that we are not told, like whereby the angels themselves, or the whatever, they took a human form, because before they were operating as just as angels, as gods or whatever. But this is where they come disguised as human beings. So they take a human form and they come as males, and they have sex with women. This is the second time. It's not the first time where it was a failure, but this one is where they modify the womb. They adulter the human soul so that it could accommodate their children. And they did that by the creation of what is called the artificial spirit. In other words, it's like an AI, basically, that imitates the spirit that takes human form. So, and this is how they were able to reproduce with women, and they produced children who are loyal to them. So, and this one, actually, the consequences of it was it degraded humanity to an extent that they lost the connection with the divine. And this is why you find people being divided into various tribes and various institutions. I mean, being dispersed all around the world, and they no longer recognize each other. So there's a story that says, like, colors, basically the variations of our appearance came from that, when the angels, or the so-called gods, they modified the appearance of a human being to create confusion. And I think the so-called puritanical beliefs, they must have stemmed from this, because if you want to create a loyal breed, you don't want it to mix with those ones who you consider to be wild. And because of this, it's like if you wanted to domesticate an animal, if you take the first breeds from the jungle and you bring them home and you try to cage them, they will always fight for their freedom. You won't be able to you can give them food, you can do all these, and you can use all kind of tricks, but so long they are naturally in their wild state, they're going to, their instincts will always be there. So what you can do is to create what you call the successive breeding, where you mix their genes, you modify their genetic composition, and then as you domesticate them further and further, they become less and less resistance, and they become more and more obedient towards you. And this is how they domesticated the animals. So it's the same thing that has been done with the human beings. And this is where you end up finding like different humans are worshiping different gods, and all of them are in competition with each other, because each group that came, they created a breed that was obedient to them. And this is one of the things, the truth that Christ brings into the world. And he says, since that incident actually created what you call fate. So fate gained power and started controlling the destinies of man and the gods and everybody else. But it's where the sins actually begins, because humans inherit all the weaknesses of the gods. So like jealousy, these things like envy, all these base instincts, they actually originate from that, because originally man did not have these kind of weaknesses. And this is where you find people start raising against each other, fighting and killing each other and all that. And this is where you also find like the laws of nature starts to govern humanity. So instead of original sin that is preached by most preachers, I actually find it quite interesting, because they don't really understand. Whenever they try to say, no, original sin was because of man ate from the forbidden tree. Now that was just invented to create confusion, because this is how theocracy suppresses truth. But if you look at it from this perspective, knowledge brings awareness, and where there is awareness, of course, if you're a slave and you gain awareness, you're no longer going to recognize your masters. You'll be like, no, hell no, I'm not going to be under you. You recognize truth. And this is where they say people who take authority as the truth, they never actually learn the truth in their entire life, or people who take laws to be the supreme thing. So you see, most religions are focused on two things. That's the obedience of the law and service. But they don't question where does this law come from, and who is this that we are supposed to be obedient to. So most people fall into the doctrines of theocrats, or these guys who position themselves in the position of God, and they demand or they dictate what people should behave and how people should react and all that. So all these worship, sacrifices and everything else, this is what Christ actually refers to it as demons. And he said, I have freed you from all this. So it's you who is going to enslave yourselves. And this is when you go to mythologies and you realize that whenever people didn't offer sacrifices, or they didn't live according to the dictates of the gods would just bring persecution. They would destroy people. They would bring fire and all that. But that's not actually the true God. Because the true Father, he intended humans to, we are naturally attracted to our source, to our whatever. But there's all these impediments that have been put. And one of them being the body that limits our perceptions in every way. And then you come to the psychic body, where the governors, they have actually power to manipulate all this. So they try to disorient us whenever we try to seek the truth. So they divert us into their truths and stuff like that. And this is why we are no longer in agreement. And this is why they say whoever is born through the womb is corrupted already. And and this is why I say most of our behavior is not naturally influenced by the external conditions, but it's also some of it we inherit the moment we are born in the womb. Because when the gods modified the womb, they left a blueprint that every child inherits. And this is where the issue of the ritual of baptism came in. It was basically for the purification of the powers of these which had corrupted the human soul. But Christ comes back and he says, when Christ descended, he says, I'm the only truth, the way, and the life. Because the whole issue of the virgin birth, which people don't understand, is because that which is born of the womb is actually already corrupted. So Christ bypassed the womb, so he didn't inherit that corruption, and this is why he had not seen in him. And because of this, he would be the one who would deliver truth to mankind. But then you see, whenever there is a truth, those in authority are the most threatened. So they cannot fight truth, but they can suppress it. They can make sure that people do not come to understand or know it. And this is where you find, like in the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge was actually hidden from man. What man was instructed to eat from was the trees which, the fruit was wicked and evil. But, there is this enlightened being that tells Adam, hey, eat from this tree, receive knowledge, because this is the way you become truly aware of yourself. So this is the tree which they had actually concealed. And this is how even today, true knowledge is concealed. I mean, there is that which has been revealed, but if you ask, like, it's say like Christ taught so many things, but how comes most of them are not available to the public? And people always try to argue, no, it's because the Holy Spirit did not intend it to reach the masses. But why would God conceal truth against humanity? It's not the case. Because when people become enlightened, the first thing that they're going to do is to disobey the established order. And one of the laws that governs the world of humanity is the law of reproduction. So whenever you go to all societies, they say they are reproducing because it's what God commanded them to do. But actually, sex is what results to the destruction of the human soul. I mean, the production. The longer we multiply, because that which is already exists, it doesn't need to form new. So humans come basically. What we reproduce is the bodies, but also at the same time, what happened? There's a part that I didn't say. Like the children who are begotten of the governors or the angels, whatever, they would not be able to enter into the true heaven. So they were cast breed. They were cast to live in the world of animals until their destruction. But the only way they can survive is either they can attach themselves as parasites to the living people, which is why they hang in the air. These are what we call the disembodied spirits. So they extract energy from the living people. They attach themselves to the living people, and these are the ones who pose as gods, and they demand human worship and sacrifice and all that. In other cultures, they will call them the ancestral spirits. But anything that remains in the middle, it's not true. And this is why the seeking of the world of the dead was actually forbidden, because the dead who exist are not truly existing. It's like parasites. And so when you venture into the world of the dead, you become their slave. And this is how they entice humans who love power, like witch doctors, whoever you want to call them. So because the true power of salvation lies within you. It's basically that which has been implanted into your heart. It's not something that comes from the external source. So that's what I mean. Like the more people reproduce and whatever, they're not really serving human interest. They are serving more the interest of the gods. And this is what Christ came to free humanity. But because people were not ready for the truth and they didn't want to accept it, this is why you still have the condition going. And then you have these people who establish themselves. These are power seekers, basically. They establish themselves as the intermediaries between God and humanity. It's something which the Jewish scribes and these Pharisees used to do. And Christ says, no, I have not given these people any authority. They don't even know who Christ is. They don't even know God. But then they claim that they have the authority from God to dictate what humans should follow. And this is why they came up with a doctrine of conformity. They force everybody to conform to their teachings, which are written there. But then you realize the doctrine of conformity actually leaves the most important lessons of all. So how can it be from God? And this is one thing people don't really understand. So anyway, so me going back to the part of freedom. It's in reference to how we forget our true freedom and we exist as our slaves. So one of the conditions for free nations or free people to exist is the societies remain small. Because the smaller you are, the less influence you have from external forces.